Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Quarantine reduced to 5 days for boosted travellers. And PM says warning signs were ignored in flooding disaster. More on that coming up. Travellers entering the country who have received their booster shots will serve a reduced quarantine period of 5 days starting next Monday. This includes Malaysians and foreigners with long-term pass holders. Travellers who are fully vaccinated but have not received a booster jab will observe a 7-day quarantine, while unvaccinated travellers will have to spend 10 days in isolation.
Non-boosted individuals have similar risk of acquiring Omicron as unvaccinated, but those who are boosted will have up to 70% less risk of acquiring Omicron. So by shortening the quarantine period for those who are boosted, the number of missed infection, especially at the point of entry, will be smaller. In March 2022, triple vaccinated amongst elderly and those who receive primary series Sinovac will be considered fully vaccinated, and we will extend the same 5 days quarantine period to this group.
The government will kickstart vaccination program for children aged 5 to 12 next month. Parents can begin registering their children beginning January 31st.
Pelancaran program pemberian vaksinasi kanak-kanak usia 5 hingga 12 tahun akan diadakan pada 3 Februari 2022 di Hospital Tunku Azizah, Kuala Lumpur. Ini adalah suntikan yang pertama.
Khairi added that the ministry also agreed to remove temperature checks from COVID-19 SOPs. Individuals will only need to do MySejahtera check-ins upon entering premises. This proposal will be brought to the weekly Quarter Ministers meeting for endorsement.
In an update regarding fake vaccine certificates being sold, Khairi revealed that investigations show that these cases were linked to private medical practitioners.
I don't want to preempt the police's investigation, but what we know is that once the investigations and also the due process in the courts prove that these vaccine certs were fake, then we will clean up the MySejahtera list to make sure that those who are proven to have bought their vaccines are taken off the list. That's the only sure way that we're gonna know.
Malaysia is expected to see a rise in COVID cases in February to March. Khairi said this is due to the fast-spreading Omicron, which will soon overtake Delta as the dominant variant. He added that current infections involving Omicron have been less severe compared to the previous Delta wave.
It will be a matter of time before Omicron overtakes Delta in the local cases, and the modelling that we do in the Ministry of Health suggests that Omicron cases and cases in general will rise in February and in March. What we are seeing, however, is that the cases are not serious or as serious as Delta. So we have not seen a corresponding rise in hospitalizations, certainly not in deaths, and also in admissions into intensive care units. So for now, our assumption of Omicron is that, of course, it will create a wave of cases, probably in February or March. But so far, all indications are that the strain on the healthcare system will not be as bad as the Delta wave.
The flood disaster that hit the country last month could have been handled better if relevant agencies did not ignore warning signs. In a special parliament sitting today, Prime Minister Dato Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said better communication and teamwork between agencies are crucial in managing future natural disasters.
Met Malaysia telah mengeluarkan sebanyak 6 kali amaran cuaca signifikan yang boleh mengakibatkan hujan lebat. Namun, amaran cuaca ini tidak diendahkan oleh setengah pihak yang terlibat secara langsung dalam pengurusan bencana kerana andaian, iaitu hanya negeri-negeri di pantai timur semenanjung Malaysia yang akan terjejas akibat banjir yang dibawa oleh hujan lebat berterusan akibat luruan monsoon.
According to him, the floods in Selangor, though unexpected, highlighted the weaknesses of agencies at the state and district levels. This, he said, led him to interfere to avoid further delays in rescue operations and aid delivery. Citing larger-scale flood disasters in Pahang last year that was better managed, he said there should have already been committees set up to handle such incidents. The special parliament sitting was set to discuss post-flood efforts, coordination of aid and long-term flood mitigation planning.
Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob was on the ground since day one of the floods, but he says many MPs were missing.
Kalau kata saya tiada, tak nampak muka waktu banjir, hari pertama pun, malam tu saya dah keluar, berada di lapangan, cuma saya tak tahulah rakan-rakan lain. Saya tak tahu, mungkinlah saya tak nampak rakan-rakan lain pun, ahli parlimen, adun dan sebagainya bekerja waktu malam tu.
Kami bekerja turun padang.
Salam hilang.
Ya.
The Ministry of Finance estimated that the cost to repair the damage caused by the floods in 8 states could reach 2 billion ringgit. Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz said 300 million ringgit has been channeled for the East Coast monsoon floods under the National Disaster Relief Trust Fund. Now, while these funds will be helpful, CEO of Ideas Trisha Yeo says there is a need for fairer and more transparent allocation of aid in the recovery process.
One major thing that I think we really need to talk about is how aid, like actual monetary aid, is disbursed and distributed across the country. More and more crises are going to occur again and again, and such repetitious occurrences of these crises mean that we need to seriously rethink the way government aid is disbursed. So Ideas actually issued a statement yesterday alongside Bersih to talk about the importance of distributing what we call constituency development funds, or CDFs, in an equitable manner.
Constituency Development Funds, or CDF, she said, should be allocated according to the needs of each constituency without discrimination.
Do not punish the constituents themselves by allocating a smaller amount of funds to that particular MP, because the MP would need to help all their constituents equally. And the flood is not going to discriminate, right? The flood is not going to say, oh, I'm going to decide to rain in an area that is run by a government member of parliament, and I'm not going to rain in an area that is run by an opposition member of parliament. No. Nature does not discriminate. Nature will, ensure that everyone is equally hit, so to speak. So if you talk about equality, I mean, this is equality of devastation. So in that sense, the aid cannot discriminate. It is very important to ensure that the development aid reaches the target people who actually need it the most.
The anti-party hopping law is expected to be tabled in Parliament during the February to March sitting, much earlier than the initial July timeline given.
Law Minister Datuk Seri Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar said a bipartisan technical committee will meet next week to detail out the proposed legal framework. Earlier, Wan Junaidi said that the anti-party hopping bill was expected to be brought to Parliament in the July session, but it will now be finalised and tabled during the first Parliament meeting due to start on February 28th. The bill is in line with the parliamentary reforms planned under the MOU signed in September last year by the government and Pakatan Harapan.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. A U.S. warship sailed through the South China Sea today, sparking warning from China's military, leading to a rise in tensions between the superpowers in the disputed waters.
China's army said the USS Benfold had illegally entered what Beijing regards as its waters, and that its naval and air forces had tracked the U.S. warship. The American Navy, meanwhile, said USS Benfold asserted navigational rights and freedoms in the vicinity of the Paracel Islands, consistent with international law. China claims almost all of the South China Sea, with competing claims from Malaysia, Brunei, the Philippines, Taiwan and Vietnam. Led by the United States, multiple Western navies conduct freedom of navigation operations to assert the idea that South China Sea is an international waterway.
The first humanitarian flights arrived in Tonga 5 days after a volcano eruption and tsunami cut the Pacific island nation off from the rest of the world. Military transport planes from Australia and New Zealand touched down at the country's main airport. Volunteers had worked for days trying to clear the runway covered in ash so that much-needed aid could arrive. Japan, China and France have indicated they will also provide assistance. The United Nations estimate more than 80% of the island's population of 100,000 have been impacted by the disaster. Thailand will resume quarantine-free travel for vaccinated travelers starting next month, following slowing COVID infections. The scheme was suspended a month ago after only 7 weeks due to the rapid global spread of the Omicron variant and uncertainty about vaccine effectiveness against it.
Authorities also extended the hours restaurants are allowed to serve alcohol to 11 p.m., but bars and nightclubs will remain closed. The moves are aimed at reviving a tourism sector that has been decimated by the pandemic. Fully vaccinated international travelers can also enter Thailand under the Sandbox program at Pattaya and Koh Chang, in addition to Phuket and Koh Samui. The Sandbox scheme allows travelers to roam freely at a specified destination for 7 days, rather than undergoing a strict quarantine at a hotel or facility.
Outfits provided for the Beijing Olympic Winter Games did not involve forced labor. The International Olympic Committee, IOC, made that clarification after U.S. lawmakers inquired about the source of the materials for the apparel provided to IOC staff.
A U.S. Congressional Commission questioned the use of cotton, possibly produced in China's Xinjiang region, where there are concerns about forced labor camps. IOC said it had conducted third-party due diligence on the apparel suppliers. China has been criticized for its treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, and human rights activists have accused the IOC of turning a blind eye to the abuses. The US, Britain and Australia are among countries that have announced a diplomatic boycott of the Games over human rights concerns. Japan has also decided against sending top officials to the Games, which starts on February 4th.
Statelessness puts individuals into a legal limbo which deprives them of many basic rights and resources that citizens enjoy. And today, many of them are children. Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests how to correct this injustice. And that is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.